Jaxson Dart is why Ole Miss football is even in championship position.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Rebel Nation. I am your host, Stephen Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media and a former Ole Miss staff member as well. Today's Locked On Ole Miss podcast covers the exciting news of players reporting today, marking potentially the beginning of a special season for Jaxson Dart and Lane Kiffin. We'll delve into how Dart has influenced this team and why this season's success hinges on his performance on the field. If everything goes as planned, Dart, the USC Trojans transfer, has a real chance to go down as the greatest quarterback in Ole Miss history. And this is a school that has had two Mannings. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, your team every day. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day. And a special hello to the everydayers who make the show what it is. And don't forget to find a second listen on the network. Chris Gordy at Locked On SEC, or even Zach Blackerby at Locked On Auburn, provides other perspectives on college football, SEC, heck, and even Ole Miss. So check it out. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down and the sports stop sporting the way we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So Jaxson Dart is getting ready to have the most influential season potentially in the history of Ole Miss football. And I don't say that lightly. I have awareness of what Archie Manning is. I went to Ole Miss. I've seen the speed limit signs. I have parked my vehicle at the Manning Center. I have seen those speed limit signs with Eli Manning, with both of those Mannings having their number retired at Ole Miss. I am fully aware of that. I am fully aware that depending on the age, you might be a Matt Corral person, or you might be a Chad Kelly person, or even a Bo Wallace person. And like I talk about all the time, John Darnell, Russ Showles, the quarterbacks of that era does not need to be forgotten as well. But what Jaxson Dart has in front of him this season is remarkable. Now let's go back in time a little bit and look at what he has done in building this roster, because a large portion of the number one transfer portal class is based off of his recruitment. Princely Amonmielen this spring talked about Jaxson Dart having an oversized influence in recruiting even defensive players to Ole Miss. It's not just on Lane Kiffin. And if you would have told me 24 months ago that a quarterback is going to come through Ole Miss and kind of take some of the shine off of Lane Kiffin, I would tell you were crazy. But if Ole Miss goes on the run that we think they're going to go off of, he is going to have an oversized influence and get an oversized amount of the credit for this season. And he deserves it. With players like Chris Pupal, with players like Princely Amonmielen, Walter Nolan, Juice Wells, that he had a large hand in recruiting. Yes, I remember that everybody was wondering if he was going to go pro, but he wasn't at any time. And he was recruiting these players even in the early parts of December. He helped build a roster unlike any that I've seen at Ole Miss in my lifetime. He has built a roster of Ole Miss that is very Alabama-like, very Georgia-like. Now, I get it that some people are going to have the same questions about this Ole Miss football team leading into the season, because mainly that's how they know how to cover football. Whenever the questions come up with unknowns and all of that, even though there is a little bit of a sample size that you can draw from at the Power 5 level with a lot of these guys. But they're going to cover it a certain way. That doesn't change the fact that this roster is at a completely different level, and a lot of that is due to the recruiting of Jaxson Dart. Now, let's talk about this. This is year 3, Jaxson Dart in a Lane Kiffin season. I realize a lot of this sounds familiar because everybody knows how I feel about Jaxson Dart as a quarterback. He has a chance when he is done at Ole Miss to own 90 to 95% of every single quarterbacking record there is, rushing and passing. That's something he can do. The ones that I think Eli is going to get to keep will be the passing touchdown mark. And that's just simply because the running game has been so good at Ole Miss. The touchdown passing numbers hasn't been up above 30 very often. So that I think Eli is going to be able to keep. But the vast majority of the records Jaxson Dart is slated to have, including passing yards, total offense, TDs responsible for, rushing yards by a quarterback. Pretty much all of the major records for a quarterback, Jaxson Dart has a direct line of sight to. Just a normal progression off of last season, he is going to hit those. The next thing is if Ole Miss makes it to the playoff, let's say they go 10-2 and make it to the playoff. They just do that again. Jaxson Dart is going to leave Ole Miss as the winningest quarterback in the history of Ole Miss football. That is nothing to shake your head at. And whenever I compare him to Connor Shaw, that's what I'm talking about. The fact that Connor Shaw was able to win 11 games twice at South freaking Carolina, that is what I was talking about whenever I compare him to Connor Shaw. Has nothing to do with NFL ability. But when you look at all of those things, if Ole Miss makes it to a playoff, makes it to Atlanta, has that special type year, if you look at chalk this season, Ole Miss is likely going to be favored in 10 or 11 of its games by the time kickoff gets here. The one that you don't know is on the road at LSU, and we all know what that can be like at nighttime. But if Ole Miss just goes chalk and goes 10-2, makes the playoff, Jaxson Dart there, he is going to walk out of this program the greatest of all time at the University of Mississippi. And this isn't talking down about Archie Manning or Eli Manning, or even Chad Kelly, Bo Wallace, or Matt Corral. This is about what Jaxson Dart has done and how he has raised Ole Miss to a level that has not been seen since they alternated quarterbacks every quarter. Johnny Vaught used to famously do that, to where one quarterback would play the first and the third quarter and another one would play the second and the fourth. That was a Johnny Vaught tactic. That's one of the reasons that the winning record is going to be so gettable for Jaxson Dart. I almost called it easy. It's not going to be easy. That was the completely wrong word. But if he gets it done, he will be warranted to be numero uno on the greatest of all time of quarterbacks at Ole Miss. Number retired, statue out front, the whole 9 yards. Because the reality of what's going on, and this is what Jaxson Dart and Lane Kiffin and Kelvin Bolden, all those guys roster building and working together and pulling the rope in the same direction have done. Ole Miss has created another period like the period they had from 1957 to 1963. That half a decade, 6-year period, Ole Miss is recreating that at the moment. Now, I do not know how 2025 is going to go and how this is going to look into the future because of the House ruling and all of that stuff. But as it sits right now, the 3-year period of Jaxson Dart has pretty much been what I've hoped for my whole life. It's pretty much been what everybody that's under this age of 65 has hoped for their whole life. So when I say that Jaxson Dart is going to change Ole Miss football forever and the perception of it, and he is the reason that Ole Miss is getting ready to go on these championship-like runs. They're number 6 in the FanDuel odds for winning the national title. The 6th team in the country to win the national title. Dart's the 3rd or 4th Heisman favorite this year. If you want to look at some crazy stuff, the graphics workers at Ole Miss, now that it's watch list season, is going to be crazy busy. To where every time they release a list, they're putting out 2 or 3 graphics. That is the type situation that Ole Miss's graphics department could be in. And a lot of that is because of the recruitment of Jaxson Dart. I just want to make sure that he gets the credit he deserves. There's a segment of the Ole Miss fan base, and I'm not downplaying them at all, and I'm not trying to put them down. But no matter what happens, they will come forth in the comments and say Archie Manning's the greatest quarterback I've ever seen. Maybe. Archie Manning never won 11 games in a season back-to-back years. Archie Manning never won 10 games in a season back-to-back years. He did go to a Sugar Bowl, but Jaxson Dart has been to a Peach Bowl, which is on the Sugars level. If he does it again, he supersedes that. He supersedes everybody as far as bowl games. If he gets to another NY6 bowl game, this will be something that no other quarterback has done since those glory days, late 50s, early 60s teams. Glenn Griffin, Jake Gibbs, those guys. But it was a different era of how the position of quarterback was played because there was single platoon. It was one platoon to where Jake Gibbs would play quarterback and he'd also play free safety. So it was a little bit different type of football. But Jaxson Dart is the reason that Ole Miss is at a championship level going into 2024. And he deserves all the credit if Ole Miss gets to do what I think Ole Miss is going to get to do. Coming up next on Locked On Ole Miss, stay tuned as we dive into the latest players reporting to camp, and we'll explore exciting new toys at Jaxson Dart's disposal. You won't want to miss this at all. I love sports. I love them so much I never want them to stop, but as playoffs wind down, we get fewer and fewer games, and the sports aren't sportsing the way we want them to. FanDuel lets me keep these sports going whenever I want to. All I have to do is open up the app, dream up any bets. Anytime I am in the mood, maybe you want to bet on Ole Miss and their over-under of 9.5 wins this season, or Ole Miss, as we just talked about, plus 1,500 to win the national title, or Jaxson Dart being plus 1,500 to win the Heisman Trophy. These are some heady odds and rankings that Ole Miss is playing in going into the season. So this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head on over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, it's an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume with all of that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you each and every single day to bring you the biggest stories without all of that screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And you might notice that I am wearing my Cracked Out Tiger t-shirt today and my Detroit Tigers hat. Today is the trade deadline day, and I am trying to will into existence Detroit trading Tarek Skubal to the Baltimore Orioles for 304 of their prime prospect bats. I'm trying to will that to happen. So excuse the attire a little bit, but that is the reason for it. Now, the players report it today, and basically what happens on player reporting day, there's physicals that happen, there's equipment that gets issued, all of that stuff the day before gets handled. Now, a lot of that in this modern day and age, they probably just set up the lockers and everything and just put the stuff in the lockers. So it's not like it was back in the day. I was there when Pete Boone was the athletic director at Ole Miss. And Pete treated me well, but it was a situation like anytime I had to order tapes, because yes, kids, I had tapes back in my video department back in the day. I had to write an itemized list of why I needed the tapes and what they were going to be used for. And then they would determine whether or not they were able to order them. And this was at a time when Ole Miss's athletic budget was probably closer to $30 million a year. Now it's pressing like $130 million now. And that's just 15 to 20 years of difference, $100 million growth in the athletic budget. So things have changed. Whenever I say that things have changed, understand that things have changed on Ole Miss's campus. But they're going to absolutely report, and that means that questions are going to come up. And one of the main questions is, when will Deion Smith arrive on campus? Everybody will have their eyes open looking at the roster. I'm assuming that Deion Smith, by the way, if he gets put on the roster, you should look on the number 6 line, because I think that's what he's going to end up being, is number 6. That's what he was at LSU. There's an offensive number 6 available to be gotten. So you can read the tea leaves there. So if he shows up on the roster, that's great. If he shows up at practice first, people will be able to understand that as well. He's a good player. He visited with Jaxson Dart just a week ago. He put an Instagram story out about it. He was in the wide receiver room looking over the offense. I genuinely think he's going to be there. The rumor I think I heard is he had a couple of classes he needed B's in. And it's sometime at the end of July, those grades come out, and then he can go up to Oxford. So those grades might not come out until July 31st. That would put him in Oxford, being able to go August 1st, August 2nd, something like that. So understand that there could still be some hiccups along the way. I don't anticipate anything major to happen. But if you look at this wide receiver unit with Deion Smith, it really becomes dangerous. And it becomes dangerous because Trey Harris, in my opinion, is the best wide receiver in all of college football. And he is the number one PFF graded wide receiver against single coverage a year ago. So like I've talked about many times on podcasts before, Ole Miss's offensive goal this year was to remove double coverage from Trey Harris. And you do that by strengthening your wide receiver room. You do that through the running back room, bringing those in. If you bring in other weapons to make it to where defenders cannot double the best single coverage wide receiver in the whole country, your offense is going to probably be in pretty good shape. So Ole Miss did that. And when you talk about Juice Wells, Lane kind of stepped in it with the 2001 South Carolina Juice Wells video inside Vaught Hemingway earlier in the week. Look on his timeline and all that of basically Juice Wells catching a pass with one hand, but they were playing 2001 in the background. And that is South Carolina's song. That's kind of been their thing ever since, what was his name? Jack Morrison. I think that was his name, the coach that died in South Carolina in the mid 80s. He made 2001 a thing at South Carolina. And them doing that, Lane just kind of amped it up just a little bit. And Williams-Brice that night has a chance to be what Neyland Stadium was in 2021. But Juice Wells looks healthy. He looks completely healthy. And I do think that in the end of the day, I think Juice Wells is going to end up being the slot wide receiver, and you're going to see him lined up kind of with Trey Harris a couple times to prevent people from being able to do that. And then you kind of like you remember Varsity Blues, the oop-de-oop, you're going to have Deion Smith on the other side if he makes it. Now, if Deion Smith for some reason does not make it, I think that wide receiver becomes Jordan Watkins. I think that Juice Wells is going to be the slot receiver either way. And I think his main job is going to be to protect Trey Harris. So you might have a situation to where Juice Wells ends up with 55 catches and, he has a good year, but not a great year. But because of what he does, Trey Harris can have an elite year. And then you look at the people backing it up like Caden Lee, Aiden Williams. And I think Aiden Williams is the next in line for Trey Harris, by the way. Everybody might be worried about Aiden Williams. It's like, hey, is he going to get on the field this year? I think he's going to get on the field this season a little bit. But I really think that Caden Lee has a chance to be a little bit of a difference maker this season. I am pretty fired up about what the wide receiver position can do. And when you have a quarterback like Jaxson Dart, we spent the whole first segment talking about what he's done. And you look at these toys that he has out at the wide receiver positions in the wide receiver room to go with the running back toys as well, who Ulysses Bentley IV, who I forget his name, Jim Nagy, something like that. He was on Michael Borky's podcast or Super Talk or something like that. And he talked about how there's several NFL franchises that have Ulysses Bentley with a higher grade for the NFL than Quinshon Judkins. Well, Ulysses Bentley's back. Now, he has a problem staying healthy. He's going to need to stay healthy, but you also have Henry Parrish Jr., which we are all familiar with Henry Parrish Jr. in his game. And you have Rashad Amos, who is a little bit of a thumper, 230 pounds, big back. He's a guy that can Derrick Henry stiff arm you, all of that stuff. But the point of this is all of this, every piece on this board is helpful to get single coverage for Trey Harris. Now, defenses might just realize that you have to double coverage Trey Harris. And if that happens, you'll see Deion Smith or Juice Wells or whoever's playing running back making plays. You're not going to be able to play this team necessarily like straight up to where they absolutely know what you're going with, because with the helmet technology, Lane Kiffin is going to be able to eat you alive on it. And, with it cutting off at like 15 seconds, I think that's the point. On the play clock at 15 seconds, the audio cuts out. Ole Miss average snap is snapping the ball at like 22 seconds. So getting up to the line of scrimmage right before the snap of the ball, whoever has it, you can just say a name and you know exactly where to go. This might be a situation where progressions are becoming a little bit of a thing of the past, and you're not able to necessarily disguise and deceive Jaxson Dart because of what's going on in his ear. Jaxson Dart calls it a cheat code. Lane Kiffin calls it a cheat code, and they're just going to have to fine-tune it starting tomorrow. Should be really interesting. And with fall camp practice kicking off tomorrow, major players are stepping into the spotlight as fall camp begins. Stay tuned to find out who could be game changers for the defense for the Ole Miss Rebels this season. It's summertime, which means it's barbecue season. So stock up on all your grilling favorites. Earn cash back on every purchase when you use Ibotta. So you won't have to choose between burgers and hot dogs. You can get both. Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. Earn on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies, even toys. So you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. You can save on over 2,400 brands and shop at over 1,000 retailers, including your favorite grocery stores, Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. It's time you've joined the over 50 million users who use Ibotta to earn cash back every time they shop. Right now, Ibotta is offering listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store, download the free Ibotta app, and start earning cash back and use the code LOCKEDONCollege. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play Store or the App Store, and use code LOCKEDONCollege. The most anticipated Ole Miss season is upon us, and some great games are on the schedule. Fuel up for them with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Meet your wellness goals in time for the season thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals with the options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious, great tasting meals. Make today the day you kickstart your healthy routine. What are you waiting for? With 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every single week, you'll always have new flavors to explore and make your day delicious from breakfast to dessert, staying fueled with easy, nutritious options. Keep kitchen time to a minimum. Factor meals are ready in 2 minutes. No shopping, prepping, cooking, or cleaning up. Enjoy effortless support for your lifestyle. Choose 6 menu preferences to help you manage calories, protein intake, avoid meat, or simply just eat well balanced. Head to factormeals.com/lockedon50 and use code LOCKEDONCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code LOCKEDONCollege50 at factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Be part of history. So practice starts tomorrow. And that means a lot of questions that Ole Miss fans might be having begin to get answered tomorrow. Walter Nolan at defensive tackle, Princely Amon-Mielen. Defensively, there's a lot of big players. How is his surgery going? Everybody knows after spring practice, he had to get surgery, which was going to cause him to come back slowly, potentially. Is Princely out practicing in a helmet and no shoulder pads type practice? A year ago at Florida, 39 tackles, 11 and a half tackles for loss, 7 sacks. Really interesting stuff. Walter Nolan, the transfer from Texas A&M last year, 37 tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks. This team defensively, Chris Hardy, 61 tackles, 16 tackles for loss, 8.5 sacks, 4 quarterback hurries for a real super athlete with Jacksonville State. You look defensively in the defensive back, all of the transfers that came in, the Trey Ayers, the Isaiah Hamilton, the Key Lawrence, the Yam Banks, the Lewis Moore. There's a lot of players that got brought in on the defensive backfield that we're interested about, and we'll see what it looks like. Hopefully, practice will be a little bit more open than it has been in the past. It was really shut down for like the first half. It was barely opened up towards the end. And this season, honestly, during the fall, I'm going to be honest about this. There is no transfer portal to be afraid of. You're playing into the season. Everybody's going to see what's going on. Practice needs to look real similar to how it has the last 3 years. Plain and simple. If you do that and kind of proceed with a little sense of normalcy of what you did a year ago, you have a chance to be pretty good. I am worried a little bit about the pucker factor because Ole Miss being in a position that they have not been in traditionally, there's an opportunity to kind of screw this up. So I am going to pay attention to stuff like that. Does this football practice season look a lot like the other football practice seasons that preceded it, or did they just cut everything off? It'll be really interesting to see exactly how they go and what is going to happen. Offensively, we talked about Jaxson Dart, the wide receivers, the running backs. The offensive line is a big question. I think the offensive and defensive line. So whenever we're running pass rush drills, inside run, I think people should pay attention if they're at practice. If Ole Miss has an open scrimmage, pay attention to inside run, because that's going to be a big deal, I think. Ole Miss is 10 deep on the offensive line. They are probably 10 deep on the defensive lines. There's a lot of dudes. So those will pay attention to what is going on. The lines, granted, a lot of it is because of the toughness of Jaxson Dart and him holding on the ball longer than he should. Okay. But the offensive line can do them some favors and get ready to go by being a powerful unit. As the fall goes on, Furman, Middle Tennessee State, Wake Forest, Georgia Southern, Kentucky, as that growth happens, there needs to be a little bit of an incremental growth on the offensive line. Should be pretty interesting stuff. I'm pretty fired up. It's here. It is here. And I hope everybody enjoys this. And like I said, my goal is to make this as fun as humanly possible. Everybody likes talking about Ole Miss sports. We talk about Ole Miss sports. Thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen of the day. We have the most perspective surrounding Ole Miss sports. It's one of the many reasons why we are the #1 Ole Miss podcast. So thank you for your support on that. Thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy Locked On College Football Podcast. Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron with discussion of the upcoming season and the ever-changing landscape of college athletics, including conference realignment, the transfer portal, NIL, college football's new expanded playoffs, and more. Locked On College Football is available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And also right now, you can become a Locked On Ole Miss insider. So if you want to follow Ole Miss the best way you possibly can without all of the trolls that you see on a message board, all of the stuff that you had thought you had to deal with in following Ole Miss, this is just to let you know you don't have to do that. This is a texting program where you are notified on everything relevant in Ole Miss sports, and you can get this without having to deal with those trolls. The best part is it comes with a 14-day free trial. We are going to add perks. We are going to add promos as fall camp starts, and it should be the future of college sports coverage. Link is in the description down below. And for those of you on YouTube, we're going to send you to Locked On Sports Today right now. Hotty toddy, everyone.